While riding the subway, Dr. Henry amazes a woman with how sharply he notices things. Just as he's about to land a date, a second train appears unexpectedly and crashes into his, creating a terrible disaster. The crash leaves most passengers either badly injured or dead, and Henry ends up impaled by a metal rod. He tries to grab his fallen pocket watch, but dies before he can reach it. Henry's tale actually began 2 centuries ago, back when he worked as a doctor aboard a slave ship and already possessed the watch. One day, a black man aboard had a mild fever, and though Henry believed rest was all he needed, the ship's owners feared it was cholera and decided to throw the man overboard. Henry tried to stand up for him, but was shot by the owners and thrown into the sea. Something occurred that night, something that granted Henry immortality. Each time he dies, his body resurfaces naked in water, just like after the train accident. When this happens, onlookers in a park see him, and police arrest him for indecent exposure. Once freed, he returns to his home above an antique shop and updates his journal, which logs every one of his deaths. Meanwhile, Detective Jo starts investigating the subway crash and discovers Henry's watch. Police search the wreck but find no survivors. The deceased are transported to the NYC medical examiner's office, where Henry happens to work as a pathologist. He's busy performing an autopsy on the train driver when Jo shows up for an update. Using his keen perception, Henry deduces that Jo is a widow and struggles with alcohol. He soon concludes that the driver was poisoned. At that exact moment, he receives a call from a stranger who claims to have seen him survive the crash. The man hangs up before revealing more. Soon after, Jo views station security footage and spots Henry boarding the train. The next day, Henry finds an anonymous envelope at work containing a photo of himself and his late wife Abigail, taken in 1955. She always believed Henry had a bigger purpose tied to his immortality. Also, in the envelope, a newspaper covering the subway disaster and a cryptic note. Henry suspects the mystery caller staged the crash to test his immortality. Henry draws blood from the dead driver and brings it home. His adopted son Abe, who knows his secret, injects Henry with the sample. Henry dies, resurfaces in a river, and realizes the poison is aconite. When he returns home, police and Jo are waiting to question him. They show him his watch, but he sidesteps the issue by telling them about the poison. He argues he can't be the killer since he's offering critical info, and they don't have enough to detain him. Later, Henry discovers a bruise left by an injection and finds a fingerprint. The print leads them to Hans. At Hans' house, they spot a dead rat and discover a greenhouse full of aconite and a lab in the garage. Hans arrives, throws poison at Jo, and flees in a car. The toxin starts affecting Jo's hand, but Henry sets it on fire to stop it spreading. Police later find Hans' wife died in a previous subway crash involving the same driver, meaning Hans sought revenge. However, this doesn't match the caller's profile. They find ethanol traces and learn 2 gallons of poison are missing. Diagrams of Grand Central lead Henry to believe Hans wants to poison the air system. They rush there, but Hans sees them first and shoots Jo. Henry, also shot, tackles Hans off the roof. Both die on impact. Jo wakes up in a hospital to find Henry beside her. She remembers him falling, but he convinces her it's impossible, and says Hans self-deleted. Just then, Henry receives another call from the same man who claims to also be cursed and seeks a way to end it all. On his way out, Henry reflects on meeting Abigail during wartime and rescuing Abe as a baby from a concentration camp. Elsewhere, a woman named Vicky sobs in a cab, fails to reach anyone, and asks to be dropped at a bridge where she ends her life. Her body lands in Henry's morgue. Though the cops call it self-deletion, Henry notices fractures and marks that suggest she tried to resist. Jo takes this evidence to her superior Joanna, who insists on closing the case. Henry refuses to sign off on a report that contradicts his findings. Vicky's parents, convinced she was happy, plead with Henry. Remembering Abigail and Abe, he investigates the bridge and finds marks showing Vicky struggled before falling. While climbing back up, he's hit by a truck and dies. Later, they find paint and skin under her nails, clear signs of a struggle. Henry also receives a new note from the caller, written on very old paper. Jo uncovers that Vicky had booked a flight to Paris. They speak to her Professor James, who offers an alibi too quickly. Henry suspects an affair and runs a DNA test on James' pen, confirming the skin under Vicky's nails matches him. James' wife confirms the affair after being confronted. Later, however, Henry realizes Vicky scratched James during intimacy. He's not the killer. Despite doubts, police arrest James. Abe examines the paper and traces its crest to a long-gone Italian hotel where Henry once stayed while considering leaving Abigail. A second autopsy of Vicky reveals flesh in her mouth, suggesting she bit her attacker. Jo soon finds James dead. Though ruled self-deletion, Henry finds clues proving murder. Visiting a student from James' papers, Henry sees a hand wound matching the bite. The student, upset he wasn't credited on a paper, killed both for revenge. He takes Henry hostage, but is shot during the standoff. Another call comes from the mysterious man, who now identifies as Adam and claims to be 2,000 years old. Henry tells Abe about the phone call. They trace the voice and location using a sound expert who confirms background noise came from a rare clock tower in Manhattan. Meanwhile, Henry performs an autopsy on a man found in the river with a mysterious tattoo and discovers surgical work from the 1800s. That night, Henry receives another message from Adam inviting him to the clock tower. Henry arrives and is surprised to find Adam waiting. Adam says he was a Roman soldier cursed with immortality after killing a man who turned out to be Jesus. He reveals his many past identities, including Jack the Ripper, and admits he's tired of living. He believes only Henry can discover how. To end it, he leaves Henry with one word: simpliciter. Henry searches his journals and finds a reference to simpliciter from 1880, when he worked at a mental asylum. He recalls meeting a violent patient named Julian, who never aged and had the same tattoo as the river corpse. Julian escaped after setting a fire and vanishing. Henry realizes Julian might be another immortal. While following this lead, Jo finds new evidence about Adam's involvement in multiple past events. Adam has a long violent history that spans centuries. He's been watching Henry for decades, waiting for him to catch up. Meanwhile, Abe is worried. He remembers how Adam once came to their shop when he was a boy and told Abigail she should leave Henry because he would never and she would. Abigail left soon after. Abe fears Adam is manipulating Henry now too. Henry visits the asylum ruins and finds Julian's old room. He finds symbols drawn in blood and hidden messages. Back at home, he tries to decipher them and realizes they point to an ancient cult that believed death was a gift from the gods. He thinks Adam is trying to recreate their ritual. Jo, suspicious, has Adam followed? She sees him meet a man with a similar tattoo and fears they're planning something. Henry and Jo trace Adam to an old cathedral where he's preparing a ritual. Inside are documents showing hundreds of suicides and failed attempts at ending immortality. Adam believes killing another immortal during the ritual might break the curse. Henry refuses to be part of it, but Adam insists it's their only hope. He says he's seen everything, done everything, and the weight of eternity is unbearable. He urges Henry to help him end it once and for all. Abe begs Henry not to go through with it. He says even if Adam dies, Henry might not. Henry agrees at first, but then changes his mind. He leaves Abe a goodbye letter and heads to the cathedral. Adam performs the ritual and stabs Henry, but nothing happens. Henry wakes up alive again, in water. As always, Adam is gone. Back at home, Abe finds Henry's journal page after page, all filled with his deaths. But the last page is blank. A new case comes up. A scientist named Martin is found dead inside a sealed panic room with no clear cause of death. Jo and Henry investigate and find the room airtight, locked from the inside, and with no signs of forced entry. Henry concludes the man died from cyanide gas released from a device in the ceiling. They locate the mechanism but not the trigger. Henry begins examining Martin's background and uncovers that he was working on classified government research, possibly involving chemical weapons. Abe warns Henry to be careful digging into military matters, but Henry pushes ahead. He finds Martin's lab has been completely wiped, computers gone, files erased. Meanwhile, Jo notices security footage of Martin being followed days before his death. She enhances the image and finds the man bears a strange resemblance to Henry, though he dismisses it as coincidence. The mystery deepens when another man connected to Martin's research is found dead under similar mysterious conditions. Henry starts suspecting that Adam may be behind these incidents, testing Henry again or sending a message. Jo, still not fully trusting Henry, begins probing more into his background. She confronts Abe and questions the timeline of Henry's life. Abe, torn between protecting his father and telling the truth, gives vague answers. Later, Henry attends a research conference undercover to find Martin's last known associate, a woman named Molly. She reveals they were developing a delivery system for biochemical agents and that Martin feared someone wanted to weaponize the project. Before she can say more, she's killed in a hit-and-run, clearly not an accident. Henry, shaken by the murder, decides to destroy all evidence connecting him to the case. Abe confronts him, saying he's acting out of fear. But Henry insists that some things are too dangerous to pursue. That night, Jo shows up at Henry's house with a photo she found, an old image from 1945. Showing a man who looks exactly like him. Henry denies it's him but doesn't offer any proof. Jo is now certain something's not right. She takes the photo to a historian who confirms it's real and places the man at a war hospital Henry once mentioned. Jo begins piecing together the impossible. Meanwhile, Henry continues trying to decode Adam's motives. He suspects Adam is forcing him into ethical choices, hoping to break his spirit. Henry receives another note. What are you willing to lose to discover the truth? That night, Henry dreams of Abigail. In his memory, they argue over his obsession with death and meaning. She begs him to live for something other than his curse. Henry wakes up troubled but more determined. As Jo closes in, Henry prepares to tell her the truth. But Adam calls again. This time, he warns Henry not to trust Jo, claiming she has secrets too. Henry doesn't know who to believe anymore. Henry wrestles with what Adam told him. He begins paying closer attention to Jo and starts to notice subtle details. How she lies about where she's been, hides her phone conversations, and keeps her personal life distant. When he gently brings it up, she snaps back and says he's the one keeping secrets. Meanwhile, a spree of killings erupts in the city. Each victim is poisoned using a rare substance from the 18th century. Henry instantly recognizes the snits, the same toxin used on an aristocrat he once tried to save in 1796. He starts to believe Adam is mimicking murders from his own past. Jo senses Henry's suspicions and demands the truth. He finally confesses. He's immortal and has lived for over 2 centuries. At first, Jo doesn't believe him, but after seeing his journal and learning about his repeated deaths, she agrees to keep his secret, warning him never to lie to her again. Working together to hunt Adam, they uncover clues that point to a secret club fixated on death and the occult. Henry and Jo sneak in and find decades of records tying Adam to this underground world. He's been influencing people for generations. Henry begins to suspect Adam's goal is bigger than chaos. He wants to be remembered, even worshipped. At the same time, Jo finds a mysterious symbol connecting all the recent killings. It's identical to one she saw in a cold case early in her career. The only one she couldn't solve. They realize Adam has been entangled in Jo's life, far longer than either of them thought. Following the trail of symbols, Henry and Jo are led to a secret chamber beneath a library. There, they find another body posed in a ceremonial pattern. Henry concludes it's a sign of something greater coming. A final ritual that might either lift the curse or unleash something far worse. The episode ends with the discovery of a burned map embedded into the corpse's back, marking coordinates that lead them to an ancient monastery hidden in the Swiss Alps. Inside the ancient monastery in the Swiss Alps, Henry and Jo arrive under cover of darkness. The stone corridors are empty, yet echoes from centuries ago seem to linger in the air. They discover that the monastery once served as a refuge for a secret sect devoted to preserving knowledge about immortality and, possibly, breaking it. Among faded books and cryptic manuscripts, they find Adam's handwriting, proof that he'd once studied here. Jo becomes fascinated by a text describing the cycle of the undying, a ritual that binds and then releases a cursed soul. But it requires a sacrifice, willing or not. As they piece together Adam's intentions, Jo begins questioning Henry more deeply. She wants to understand what it feels like to live for centuries, what he's lost, what he's still clinging to. Henry, for the first time, opens up. He speaks of love he outlived, wars he regretted, and the loneliness that followed every new identity he had to assume. They grow closer, but Adam is always one step ahead. He lures them into a trap beneath the monastery, a catacomb untouched for ages, filled with symbols drawn in blood. He appears, calm and charismatic, and tells Henry that the curse was never meant to be broken, it was meant to evolve. Adam offers Jo a choice. Help him complete the ritual and gain understanding beyond time, or be forgotten like all the others. Jo stalls him long enough for Henry to break free, and a violent confrontation follows. Amid fire and crumbling stone, Henry wounds Adam, but he escapes again, leaving behind a final warning. It ends where it began. They barely make it out before the entire chamber collapses. Outside, snow falling silently, Jo turns to Henry and says, "What did he mean? Where it began?" Henry doesn't answer. He simply looks east toward London. Back in London, Henry returns to the city he once called home. Memories greet him at every corner, some beautiful, most haunting. Jo senses the weight in his silence as they move through foggy streets and hidden alleys. She's never seen him like this before. They track Adam's trail to a crumbling manor on the edge of town. Henry recognizes it instantly. It was once the house where he first died, the beginning of his curse. Now, it stands decayed and hollow, yet somehow alive with echoes from the past. Inside, they find a shrine, photographs, relics, even locks of hair from people Adam has known or killed through the years. Jo shudders. Henry stares at one photo, longer than the others. Abigail. She's younger, smiling, unaware of the tragedy to come. Adam appears again, this time calmly waiting in the drawing room. He speaks like an old friend, unafraid. He tells Henry that immortality was never a punishment. It was a gift they failed to understand. He believes they are chosen, not cursed. Henry asks what Adam truly wants. Adam says he wants to end history, his own and Henry's, on his terms. That their stories have stretched long enough. Jo challenges Adam, accusing him of orchestrating deaths, manipulating lives. Adam admits to it without shame. Every death was a step toward clarity, he claims. And now, only one step remains. He disappears again, leaving behind a journal written in multiple languages, across multiple centuries. Henry realizes it contains the formula for the ritual modified. It no longer needs a willing sacrifice, but it still needs blood. They leave the manor and prepare for what's next. Jo asks Henry if he's afraid. He says yes, and not of death, but of what he might become if it never comes. That night, Henry dreams again of Abigail. She tells him the end is close, but warns that the cost will be more than he knows. He wakes up with tears in his eyes, and one word on his lips: Brooklyn. Back in London, Henry returns to the city he once called home. Memories greet him at every corner, some beautiful, most haunting. Jo senses the weight in his silence as they move through foggy streets and hidden alleys. She's never seen him like this before. They track Adam's trail to a crumbling manor on the edge of town. Henry recognizes it instantly. It was once the house where he first died, the beginning of his curse. Now, it stands decayed and hollow, yet somehow alive with echoes from the past. Inside, they find a shrine, photographs, relics, even locks of hair from people Adam has known or killed through the years. Jo shudders. Henry stares at one photo, longer than the others. Abigail. She's younger, smiling, unaware of the tragedy to come. Adam appears again, this time calmly waiting in the drawing room. He speaks like an old friend, unafraid. He tells Henry that immortality was never a punishment. It was a gift they failed to understand. He believes they are chosen, not cursed. Henry asks what Adam truly wants. Adam says he wants to end history, his own and Henry's, on his terms. That their stories have stretched long enough. Jo challenges Adam, accusing him of orchestrating deaths, manipulating lives. Adam admits to it without shame. Every death was a step toward clarity, he claims. And now, only one step remains. He disappears again, leaving behind a journal written in multiple languages, across multiple centuries. Henry realizes it contains the formula for the ritual modified. It no longer needs a willing sacrifice, but it still needs blood. They leave the manor and prepare for what's next. Jo asks Henry if he's afraid. He says yes, and not of death, but of what he might become if it never comes. That night, Henry dreams again of Abigail. She tells him the end is close, but warns that the cost will be more than he knows. He wakes up with tears in his eyes, and one word on his lips: Brooklyn. The building is long gone, replaced by a modern apartment complex, but the ground still holds weight. Henry says he feels her there like time folds around certain places. They follow the clues in Adam's journal to an abandoned church tucked between warehouses. It's quiet, eerie. Inside, the floor is covered with ash and salt. Symbols are carved into the pews. In the center, a stone basin sits, filled with dark water. Adam waits. He tells Henry this is where it must end, not just the curse, but the story between them. He explains that the ritual is complete, except for one final act. One of them must die by the other's hand. Henry refuses. He says the curse doesn't define them, But Adam insists it's the only way to make the pain mean something. Jo tries to stop the ritual, but Adam throws her aside. Henry rushes to her, bleeding from a wound he didn't see coming. As Adam begins chanting, Henry rises. He stabs Adam with a shard of the basin, driven not by hate, but by mercy. Adam collapses. The church begins to shake. The symbols ignite. Henry falls to the ground, his body lifeless. Jo screams, then silence. Hours later, Jo wakes outside the church, alone. The building is gone, nothing but a patch of scorched earth remains. No body. No blood. Just a watch lying in the grass. She picks it up. It's Henry's. Still ticking, in her apartment. Weeks later, Jo receives a letter. No return address. Inside, a single photo of Henry, standing in a sunlit field, smiling. On the back, not all curses end in death. Some begin in love.